1. But meanwhile up front at 50-1, King Guillermo now going to the lead. Here's King Guillermo on the outside trying to pull a huge upset. Jansen is storming home on the outside. Inside the final furlong, do you believe this? King Guillermo at 49-1. He doesn't just win it, he wins it off impressively. Solivente from absolutely last.
And welcome back to the final Kentucky Derby coverage video we're going to be doing here on Racing Rundown. I mentioned this earlier in this week. Once again, as usual, our friend Jay Privman from the Daily Racing Forum will be joining us to talk some Kentucky Derby action like he's done in the past for some races. So without any further delay, we're going to get that started right now. So I guess before we get going, how are you doing today, Jay? A bit Derby starved?
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to the race on Saturday. It's a terrific weekend of racing. Both the Friday and Saturday cards came up sensational, so it's certainly an unusual and unprecedented situation, but it's always of great interest, so I'm looking forward to it.
You know, looking at the presumptive favorite for the Kentucky Derby, obviously anything can happen, but all signs are pointing towards Tizzalaw being not necessarily overwhelming per se, but is going to have a very significant backing going into this race. And looking at what he's done this year, obviously he's justified that. What do you think of Tizzalaw coming out of the Travers and going into this Kentucky Derby?
No, I mean, he's the obvious and deserving favorite. He's been at the top of the charts for quite a while, and he seems to have just gotten stronger as the year's gone on. I thought his Belmont win was very impressive, and his Travers win was even more impressive, and significantly it was at 1.25 miles, the same distance as the Derby. So, you know, I don't think there was any question that he could handle 1.25 miles, but if there was, he emphatically answered it. So, you know, based on current form and what we've seen, he deserves to be the favorite, and I'm sure he'll run another good race.
Now, the next point is kind of a little bit twofold. You've got two horses coming out of the Shared Belief Stakes. Honor AP has been, there are a lot of people who really like this horse, really impressed by the Santa Anita Derby win. First of all, with respect to him, what do you think of his effort in the Shared Belief Stakes and coming into this? And then secondly, about 1,000 Words also coming out of that race, having gotten the win there.
So, you know, Honor AP, as you know, is a horse I've been very high on for months. I mean, even before Santa Anita's winter meeting started back in December, at the end of 2019, I wrote a story of 2-year-olds turning 3 to watch, and I led with John Sheriffs, and Honor AP was the horse whose photo was in the story. And he's continued to progress as I had hoped he had. I thought his Santa Anita Derby win was quite good. The Shared Belief, you know, I didn't think he ran obviously as well as he can. It was at 1 1/16, which I think is short of ideal for him. He won the Santa Anita Derby at 1 1/8, and I think the 1 1/4 of the Kentucky Derby is going to benefit him quite a bit. And also the track at Del Mar early in the meet, back when he ran in the Shared Belief, was kind of loose and cuppy, and I just don't think he really liked it as much as he likes the firmer track at Santa Anita. And the track at Del Mar kind of firmed up after that over the month of August, and I thought his works coming out of the Shared Belief were very good. A nice, strong series of works for John Sheriffs, who's an excellent trainer, and I fully expect Honor AP to fire a huge race in the Kentucky Derby. As you know, as for 1,000 Words, I don't know what to make of him. You know, he really looked like he had gone off form earlier in the year. He was a decent second in the Los Alamitos Derby behind his stablemate Uncle Chuck, and then he came down to Del Mar, and he just started training really strongly prior to the Shared Belief, which he won, and he's trained strongly coming out of that. The thing that I'm having trouble wrapping my head around is that his figure for the Shared Belief was much higher than anything he'd done previously, and I'm just not sure if that means that he's reached a new level or if maybe that number is a little higher than it should be. So I'm a little bit skeptical of him. But I do like that he's back in good form, and I like that he showed a real fight to win last time, which is something that had been absent in his couple prior races, but was a hallmark of his the way he ran earlier in his career.
I would definitely agree with that. As has been well documented, for the past couple weeks, I was not really super high on this horse, and kind of looking back at it, you can easily draw a line through the Oaklawn Stakes with him being completely predicated by the start and his races. I thought the San Felipe wasn't that good, but he had the two good races as a 2-year-old, and as you mentioned, he showed his fight in the shared belief, and the hallmark of him winning the race at Los Alamitos de Futurity last year was his ability to not give up the lead. Sticking on the West Coast, or not most recently the West Coast, but sticking with Bob Baffert, Authentic obviously has a lot of questions coming into him in this race. It's weird to say about a horse who's coming out of a win in a Grade 1 that, there's a lot of naysayers with Authentic and concerns with the distance. How do you feel about him, especially with the way that it kind of seemed like he hit a wall in the Haskell? Or does that concern you with him and the pedigree suggesting he may not want to go 1.25 miles?
Yeah, I mean, I've written about this a lot in the racing form, and I'm concerned that the extra distance is going to be challenging for him, and that the 1.25 miles is going to be a tough thing for him. But the thing, if you like him, you're going to get the best price you've ever had on him. Here's a horse who's been no higher than 6-5 in his 5 races so far. He'll be at least 6-1 and probably higher than that in the Kentucky Derby. And the only horse who's ever beaten him is Honor AP. So, from that standpoint, he actually might be a good gamble. I don't think he's going to win going 1.25 miles. I think it's that extra furlong is going to be his undoing. But if you're looking at the race from a value standpoint, I actually think he's going to be a higher price than he should be based on what he's accomplished to this point.
And getting to another horse that, has kind of had, you can call it a little bit of bad luck, but New York Traffic has had a very good stakes level half of his 3-year-old year. He won an allowance at the fairgrounds for his first win of the year and his only win of the year, but he does have is coming off of 3 consecutive really good second place finishes in graded stakes races. We already mentioned he almost got up against Authentic in the Haskell. Maxfield beat him in the Matt win. It's definitely no shame to lose by a length to Maxfield, a horse who, if he was healthy and able to be here, definitely would be one of the favorites. And then he did run, I don't want to say his coming out race because he did run a good race in the Risen Star, but probably the race that really put him on the map was that second place finish that he had in the Louisiana Derby back in March. What do you think about New York Traffic? Does it concern you? The one concern that I had was that he was getting beaten by the best horse talent-wise in his races. Do you think that's a concern with New York Traffic? And how do you view him out of those 3 second place efforts?
I think if you run well behind highly ranked horses, there's nothing wrong with that. And he's second to Maxfield and second to Authentic. That's not something I would classify as a concern. He proved that he can run close to that. I mean, it'd be a concern if he finished 5th beaten 10 lengths, but he was only beaten a length by Maxfield, and he barely got beat by Authentic last time out in the Haskell. So those aren't concerns. But the concern for me is that I'm not sure he wants to run 1.25 miles, even though he did run well going 1 mile and 3/16 in the Louisiana Derby. But in all the races that he's been in, the pace where he's been effective, the pace has been fairly moderate. And I think the pace of this Derby might be a little bit quicker than he's used to facing when he runs well. I don't think Authentic's going to be able to go as slow as he did last time, or that the pace will be as slow as it was in the Matt win. I don't think it's going to be lightning fast, but I think it'll be a little quicker than what New York Traffic usually encounters, and I'm not sure how he's going to react to that. He might be fine because he fires every time, and for that he's certainly an admirable horse. He's never run a bad race since Safi Joseph took over as his trainer at the beginning of the year. I just don't know how he'll react if the pace is as quick as I think it might end up being.
The pace talk does actually get to a segue that I wanted to get to at some point, and I guess we might as well get to it now. How do you think the scratch of Art Collector affects the pace of this race?
It affects it a little bit because obviously he would have been a prominent horse early, but I don't think there's anybody in the race who is faster than Authentic, and where Authentic's drawn, he's going to have to be sent away from there. And the other horse who I think is going to show really good speed is King Guillermo, who is fresh. He hasn't run in 4 months. And in watching his works, I mean, he's very aggressive usually when he breaks off. And because of where he's drawn, I think he needs to be used to be able to get a decent position early. He's in post 6, and he can't be passive leaving there, or he's going to get shuffled back. So I think he's going to have to be sent away from there. And so those 2 horses, I think, will help set a legitimately honest pace for the race. But certainly Art Collector not being in the race takes away a horse who would have been at the least forwardly placed and helping to push it along.
And that's actually a good segue to get to King Guillermo. You know, he was an unknown horse, and then he won the Tampa Bay Derby at astronomical odds. And at least in my opinion, he backed it up with his really good second place finish. He was beaten 3.5 lengths by Nadal, but you know, I know that there's a sizable camp out there that believes that Nadal was the most talented 3-year-old in the United States. You know, that's an argument that can be had at another point, but it was a good second place finish that he had, and he beat some good horses. You know, we talked about Wells Bayou already, Storm the Court. The feelings for him are kind of down since the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, but he was the Eclipse Award winner, was the Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner. Silver Prospector was a multiple stakes, graded stakes winner. He did beat Tis the Law last year. There were some good horses underneath, and he beat all of them except for Nadal. Do you think that you know, the Tampa Bay Derby really showed that that this horse does have some real talent?
It did. I mean, I thought he ran wild in the Tampa Bay Derby. He was fast. He drew off. He galloped out strongly. He got a strong buyer speed figure. And you're right. He ran a very good race behind Nadal in the Arkansas Derby. I just don't know what to make of him. You know, coming in off such a long way off, to his advantage, he does run well fresh. His race in the Tampa Bay Derby was off a pretty long way off as well, like 3 months. This is even longer. So he runs well fresh. It's just sort of uncharted waters here. I think he'll run well, but he's going to have to basically turn back Authentic and then hold off the late runners to prevail. And I don't know that he can do all of that.
And talking about King Guillermo actually brings the perfect opportunity to segue to the next horse. One horse that I really liked underneath in this Kentucky Derby, Solivente, winner of the Sam Davis at Tampa, and he was second in that race behind King Guillermo. I thought he closed really well in there. And also his other win this year was in an allowance at Gulfstream, and that was over some very good stakes winners. Ete Indienne is definitely one of those horses. Chivalry was also a multiple stakes winner at the Gulfstream meet. The one issue with Solivente you could make is the layoff. I'm willing to give him not necessarily a pass, but I can see why he ran the sixth place effort that he did. What do you make of Solivente?
Yeah, I really was disappointed in his Belmont Stakes race. You know, he was coming back on short rest from the Gulfstream allowance that he'd won previously, but I didn't think that was a hard race on him. He got a real setup. It was a blazing pace, and he was just able to sit back and kind of gallop home and win the race. I thought it was a good tune-up for a horse who hadn't run in 3 months. It's kind of like a paid workout in the afternoon. My concerns with the Belmont are twofold. Not only did he just not run at all at any point in the race, but he added front leg wraps for that race for the first time. And so the combination of that, and then the fact that since then he's worked exclusively on turf, just have me concerned over whether he's peaked and is on the backside of his best form right now.
Now, this is, as most Kentucky Derbies are, there's a wealth of horses that, you know, are going to be coming off the pace, and that's usually where you're going to find your value is off the pace horses that would definitely benefit from a quicker pace. One of the horses that I want to get to that's more highly regarded is Max Player, who's coming out of the 2 really good third place finishes behind Tis the Law. He did have the stakes win in the Withers earlier this year. What do you think of Max Player? Do you think he's the type that can translate running third in the Belmont and the Travers into running a good underneath race in the Kentucky Derby?
Sure, I'm sure he's probably capable of that. His last couple races were both perfectly fine. He's just shown that he's quite a few lengths behind where Tis the Law is now. maybe he can improve a little bit off of his recent races. And if Tiz the Law doesn't run as well at Churchill, and his one loss was at Churchill, the combination of those things maybe brings those horses closer together. But I think Max Player is going to obviously have to run the race of his life to be a win factor in here. But in terms of being able to get a piece of the action for the gimmicks, I think he's certainly a horse you have to use, and I think a lot of people will use.
And, one horse that is coming into the Kentucky Derby, I already mentioned that the stock has definitely fallen on the champion 2-year-old Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner from last year, Storm the Court. Do you think there's anything left in him for him to run, not necessarily a winning race, but to run an okay race in the Kentucky Derby, or do you think that form that he showed as a 2-year-old is past him?
I just don't think he's improved at all from 2 to 3. He just hasn't gotten any better. His career best as a buyer is a 90. His Breeders' Cup Juvenile was an 87. 7 months later, he's only running 3 points faster. That's not developing like some of these other horses have. He hasn't won since the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. There were a couple races earlier this year where he was clearly inferior to horses like Authentic and Honor AP and King Guillermo. And I thought last time they made a smart move with him running in La Jolla. They put him on the grass. He's by a Breeders' Cup Mile winner in Court Vision, and he ran a good race. It was a good second, Smooth Like Straight. It was an outstanding 3-year-old grass runner. And to me, it was like, wow, you maybe picked his head back up. You put him on the grass. Del Mar Derby's coming up on September the 6th. It's like a good spot for him. And instead they're going to run in the Kentucky Derby. I just think he has absolutely no chance. And, I just hope it doesn't send him back further, because I think they really had found a home for him on grass, and now they're getting away from that to run in this race.
Going back and looking through the history of the Kentucky Derby, in most of the Kentucky Derbies in recent years, there are a few outliers, but in a lot of cases, there's examples of huge long shots. Last year, obviously, with Country House ran second. Year before that, Instilled Regard was fourth, also at big odds. If you were to take, one of the long shots that are going to be greater than 40 to 1, who would you think of those horses has the best chance to run a third or a fourth place finish and kind of be that long shot at astronomical odds that fills out a try or a superfecta?
I'll give you two. One's going to be, I think, shorter significantly than the other, but one of them would be Enforceable, who's a horse that I liked quite a bit earlier this year. He hasn't progressed as much as I was hoping he would from the races that I saw him run at the fairgrounds earlier. He hasn't gotten a whole lot better, but he was given some time off after a dull try in the Louisiana Derby. The Bluegrass was kind of a means to an end. He was running on well behind fourth behind two top horses, an Art Collector and Swiss Skydiver, and he's going to be running late. He'll be a big price, and I think he can get into the gimmicks at a pretty big number. And the other horse who's going to be just a giant number, one of the longest shots in the race, who I think actually has a chance to get into the superfecta, is Mr. Big News, who won the Oaklawn Stakes on a sloppy track and then came back 3 months later in the Bluegrass, and that race was better than looked. He broke poorly, stumbled at the start. He got into some traffic trouble going down the backstretch. He got shuffled back again, heading to the far turn, and he still kind of tried to keep to his task. He's beaten a decent amount, 10 lengths, but I don't think it was a fair representation of what he can do. And he's a horse who they're going to take back and make one run with. And when some of these other horses are starting to run out of gas down the stretch, I think he could pass and clunk up and get into the gimmicks at a huge number. So those are the two that I think have a chance to outrun their odds, and I'm going to be using in the gimmicks.
One more horse for the Kentucky Derby that I do just want to quickly ask you about is the very late entrant Money Moves he's the Todd Pletcher representative for this race. Doesn't have a start in a stakes race. What do you think about him? Does he have anything interesting going for him in this Kentucky Derby? Does the fact that he hasn't started in a stake race concern you?
The fact that he hasn't started in a stake race does concern me. He's very inexperienced. He's only had 3 starts. He's running against top class horses like Tis the Law and Honor AP and Authentic and several others. And I just think this is a vanity project for his owners. And, they obviously wanted to run in the Kentucky Derby, but I just find it hard to envision a horse like this doing well.
And just while we have you here, this is a Kentucky Derby talk, but the Kentucky Oaks is on Friday. I do just want to ask you, it's being built as it's not a match race because there are other good horses in there, but, there's obviously the two superstars, Swiss Skydiver and Gamine. What do you think of those two fillies going into the Kentucky Oaks?
I mean, they're obviously very talented horses. You can't fault Swiss Skydiver at all. She's gone all over the country, California, New York, ran well in the bluegrass behind Art Collector. Terrific form. Ran well going a mile and a quarter. Now cuts back to a mile and an eighth. I mean, she's the horse to beat. I think on paper and on current form. Gamine is brilliantly talented. I have big concerns about whether the mile and an eighth is going to be suitable for her. Her 1-2 turn race was unquestionably her worst race. And now she's being asked to go a distance that's even farther than that. I actually think Speech has a chance to beat both of those horses. I think she's a lot better than she was when she ran against Swiss Skydiver in California earlier this year. I liked her last race a lot. She's trained very well at Del Mar, and I think she's going to run huge on Friday. So I don't think it's a two-horse race.
All right, well, thank you for coming on again, as always, Jay. And do you have any other closing remarks on any of the races on this card?
No, I mean, I'm really just looking forward to a terrific day of racing. I've doing previews on a couple of the other races for the Racing Form, and Smooth Like Straight is in the American Turf for the same trainer, Michael McCarthy, who has Speech in the Kentucky Oaks, and I think he's got a big chance with CC in the 7 furlong Derby City Distaff as well. So I mean, he's sitting on what should be, or what could be, a very big weekend for him. But the whole weekend, both days, I mean, I think the quality of the racing is terrific, and it should be a lot of fun.
And that will be it for us on this episode of Racing Rundown. Like I already mentioned, we've got our full in-depth previews of both the Kentucky Derby and the Kentucky Oaks. Those will be in the descriptions. Go check that out if you haven't seen that already. You can also go follow us on our social media. That will also be linked in the description. You can follow Jay on Twitter at DRF Privman. And like I already mentioned, it's always a pleasure to have him on. Thank him once again. You can see my top 4 in my Kentucky Derby preview. Once again, thank you for stopping by. If you're not subscribed, consider subscribing, and we will see you next time.
At the rail, Shoplifted moves through. Tyshawn has the lead. Shoplifted is after him. These two match strides. Mr. Big News is running a very big race, and Farmington Road has come from the back of the pack. Mr. Big News just in front. Farmington Road to the outside. Mr. Big News trying to spring a huge upset. Farmington Road second. Mr. Big News, Farmington Road. Mr. Big News.